Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're popping open a seriously fascinating time capsule. We're looking at a deeply personal, 6-day diary written by a 19-year-old missionary newly assigned to San Francisco back in the fall of 1994. You know, when we think of historical documents, we usually picture these grand, world-changing events, right? But honestly, there is something just incredibly captivating about the raw, unfiltered lens of early adulthood. We get to experience the sheer awe of a new city, the anxiety of living away from home, and that intense camaraderie of a shared purpose, all wrapped up in the absolutely mundane details of everyday life. Okay, let's dive right into this. Now, before we get to the really profound moments of this young guy's journey, I just have to share this with you. Yes, you are hearing that correctly. That is a completely serious, maybe semi-serious, recounting of a rat picking up a refrigerator. It's an absolute comedic peek in the diary, and don't worry, we are definitely going to get to the full context of this giant rat incident in just a bit. But first, to really appreciate the absurdity and the joy of this week, we kind of need to understand the world our diarist is navigating.
So here is our roadmap for the week of September 20th to the 25th. We'll be going from P-Day beach football to a Muni train ride, exploring Dolores Park, the infamous giant rat incident, hitting the 1-month mark, and finally ending with some Sunday reflections.
Section 1. Welcome to San Francisco. Brotherhood on the beach.
Okay, so picture this. You're 19 years old, you're miles from home, and you're just dropped into a massive metropolitan city. In a situation like that, your peer group basically becomes your entire world. That intense camaraderie we find in early adulthood, it's a completely universal experience, and it is front and center right at the beginning of this diary. Now, to totally get what's happening this week, we do need to translate a bit of the terminology into, universal coming-of-age concepts. Our diarist refers to P-Day, which stands for Preparation Day. Just think of this as the designated day off, that one day a week reserved for doing laundry, running errands, and finally catching a quick breather. He also compares things to the MTC, or Missionary Training Center, which was essentially his boot camp before arriving in the city.
So on his P-Day, the plan was simple: do laundry. But the bus took way too long. So what do a bunch of 19-year-olds do? They ditch their chores and head straight to the beach at 11 a.m. for a massive 15-person game of flag football. His companion actually happened to be a high school starting quarterback. And this brilliantly illustrates the whole dynamic of the group, because despite getting picture-perfect passes, our diarist fully admits he still never scored. He describes guys drawing up these hilarious football plays in the sand, just laughing uncontrollably. He writes about how simply being out there was one of the neatest feelings he'd had since arriving. It was just this unforgettable sense of brotherhood.
Of course, after the high of the beach, reality kind of sets back in. They head home to do that laundry. Totally thrilled, by the way, that there are no lines like there were at the training center. But then we get this incredibly relatable moment of pure teenage angst. He steps on a scale, sees the number 164, and literally writes, "Ouch, I am getting fat." His immediate response to this so-called crisis, he just drops down and does a rigorous routine of 100 push-ups and 140 crunches. I mean, it is just a perfect snapshot of youthful vanity mixed with sheer willpower.
Section 2. Exploring the Bay. Discovering a new city.
Now, as we roll into Thursday and Friday, we shift from that insular world of brotherhood to the pure, unadulterated awe of a newcomer exploring a massive, world-class city for the very first time. And notice how youthfully enthusiastic his descriptions are here. Everything is a giant adventure. He goes to Dolores Park and describes it as being infested with palm trees. Infested, which is just such a uniquely quirky way to describe landscaping, right? They eat these cheap meals at a brilliantly named corner spot called Chinese Food and Donuts. He is absolutely mind-blown by the public transit, just marveling at the Muni train going above and below ground and the BART subway rocketing at 70 miles per hour underwater toward Oakland. He even sneaks in some sightseeing, snapping photos of Alcatraz and the Golden Gate Bridge. As he puts it, just having 6 young guys hanging out together in downtown San Francisco felt, quote, extra cool. But, living in the city also meant dealing with the actual realities of shared apartment living. They had a huge conference to attend in Oakland the next day, which meant waking up incredibly early. They actually had to make formal shower assignments. He drew the short straw and got the 5:30 a.m. slot. But honestly, he was thrilled. Going first meant he actually got warm water from what they affectionately called the waterfall, which was literally just a shower head coming straight down out of the ceiling. Hey, it's the little, mundane victories that count, right?
Section 3. The Gila Monster. The comedic conflict.
All right, now we reach Friday and the absolute comedic peak of the week. I gotta warn you, the contrast between their serious spiritual work and the reality of being 19-year-old roommates in a city apartment is about to get delightfully absurd. Let's look at the reality versus the legend here. At 5 a.m., a roommate named Elder Bjorn comes sprinting into the room, totally terrified. The actual reality? A rat with big claws waddled into the kitchen, followed by 3 mice. But throughout the day, as they're traveling on the BART to their conference, Elder Bjorn's exaggerations start to grow. And grow. He starts claiming the rat is so enormous it would just eat a normal trap, so you'd literally need a trap on a trap. He even nicknames it the Gila Monster because of its sheer size. And, as we heard at the very beginning of this explainer, he eventually claims he saw the rat try to steal their entire refrigerator, only giving up because it wouldn't fit in the mouse hole.
When they finally drag themselves back to the apartment that night at 8:30 p.m., they go into full defensive mode against this so-called Gila Monster. They clean the entire house so the rodents have absolutely nothing to eat, and they set out those terrible sticky traps. But the absolute best part of this story is how the tension of the evening gets broken. While keeping watch out the window, one of the roommates gets the brilliant idea to grab a squirt gun and start spraying random people walking down the San Francisco sidewalk. Thankfully, as the diarist notes, he stopped pretty quickly once the sun went down and the, quote, freaky-looking people started coming out.
So, what was the grand finale to the epic saga of the Gila Monster? The number 4. On Saturday morning, despite all those legendary tall tales, they managed to catch exactly 4 mice. Our diarist proudly notes that his specific trap failed to kill any of them, and when his exhausted roommates asked him to help clean up the mess, he flat out refused. The glamorous life in the big city, am I right?
Section 4. Work and Milestones. The reality of the mission.
Amidst all the flag football, the sightseeing, and the rodent battles, we can't forget the actual purpose of their trip. All of this is layered on top of their daily routine, which was a total roller coaster. Step 1 was just the daily grind, checking referrals day after day, often having absolutely no luck. Step 2 was dealing with the pressure of leadership, traveling all the way to Oakland for a conference and being super relieved to find out he wasn't quite as terrified of their leader, President Smart, as he thought he'd be. But then they hit the highs. Step 3, they get a hold of a man named Damon, meet him at the church, and are just thrilled to discover he'd actually read the first 4 chapters of the Book of Mormon. And finally, Step 4, hitting the phones late at night and miraculously booking 2 appointments right out of the gate.
All of this hard work culminates on Saturday with a massive personal milestone. He hits the 1-month mark of his mission. He's incredibly pumped about it, even joking that he should burn one of his socks to celebrate. But the diary is also deeply vulnerable right here. Amidst the celebration, he admits to a really rough feeling. He hasn't received any letters from home yet. And even worse, his mom wrote to tell him that she hasn't received any letters from him, and she is worried. It's just this stark reminder of exactly how young he is, balancing this profound independence with a very natural, very human homesickness.
Section 5. The Best Days. A Poignant Reflection.
And that brings us to Sunday, the final day of our explainer. After a wild week of high-speed transit, giant rats, and massive emotional highs and lows, the diary wraps up with a surprisingly poignant reflection born out of a really quiet, kind of uneventful day. Sunday starts off slow. Church is delayed until 10:20 a.m. because the primary children are putting on a show. They check their calendar and realize they actually have 4 dinner appointments booked, which he notes is pretty amazing for this area. So they spend the rest of the afternoon trying to build trust with the locals. But the result? Well, mostly misses. One guy didn't want to come back to church, most people weren't even home, and hilariously, they went to try and visit a man simply referred to as Rambo, but Rambo wasn't there. So after striking out trying to find Rambo, they just head back to the apartment, they're sitting around having some cool conversations, and then he writes this exact quote, "These are the best days of my life." The really crucial point here is this. It wasn't a day of massive spiritual revelation or dramatic success. It was a week of missing home, worrying about his weight, fighting mice, and getting rejected at front doors. But looking around at his roommates completely wrapped up in that shared struggle and brotherhood, he experiences this profound, incredibly heartwarming realization of absolute joy. It really makes you pause and think, doesn't it? The magic of a diary is that it captures the beautiful absurdity of the present moment before our memories filter it all out. What totally mundane week in your own past, full of chores, annoying roommates, or minor victories, might actually represent the best days of your life if you had just taken the time to write it down? Thank you so much for joining me to explore this incredible slice of life. Stay curious, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.
The real reason Latter-day Saints go on missions runs deeper than conversion numbers, and the church has always known it. The mission doesn't open with a quota, it doesn't open with a sales pitch, it opens with a call, a letter that tells a teenager where they're going and invites them to give 18 months to 2 years of their life to something larger than themselves. No salary, no choice of location, limited contact with the people they love most. That's not a recruitment strategy, that's an invitation into transformation. And the further you get into what a mission does to a person, the clearer the real purpose becomes. It's not primarily about the people being taught, though that matters. The invitation, the one that shapes almost every elder and sister who serves, is this: find out yourself by serving others. Not because your parents believe it, not because it's what people in your community do, but because you stood on a doorstep in a foreign country in a language you were still learning and testified of the restoration and felt something confirm it from the inside. Joseph Smith himself described his own conversion not as an argument he won, but as an experience he had, a personal encounter with God that left him changed. That's the pattern the mission follows. Here's what I find remarkable about what a mission produces. It takes teenagers who, by every cultural standard, are supposed to be finding themselves through college and experiences and freedom, and instead drops them into discomfort, structure, and service. And what comes out on the other side is almost always someone who knows how to work, knows how to love people they didn't choose, and knows what they believe and why. The world doesn't produce that at 20, the mission does. Every missionary is living that invitation out loud, asking it every day in front of strangers in hard places with everything on the line. That's not indoctrination, that's the opposite of indoctrination. It's the most personal, unmediated encounter with faith a young person can have. It's not for institutions, it's not for statistics, it's for one person, in one moment, asking a real question and being willing to receive a real answer. That's what a mission is for, and the people who come home from one, they carry that answer with them for the rest of their lives.